Hi, and thanks for joining us for session 5 in our series called Endgame, where we look at the major themes of the book of Revelation. Let's do a quick recap. In the first session, we introduced the theme of good versus evil, and we looked at the personal evil in our lives. And God's endgame was to deal with our human evil. In the second session, that looked at good versus evil, we were introduced to our adversary, Satan, and that God's endgame was to defeat Satan. In session 3, we introduced the second theme in the book of Revelation, which is around worship. And we looked at the difference between counterfeit and originals, and that God's endgame was to judge the counterfeit. In our last session, we continued in with worship, and we looked at who is worthy to be worshipped, right? And that God's endgame was to judge the kings and the rulers of this world, because only He has ultimate authority, and only He is our Creator. Today, we begin the third theme in the book of Revelation, which is actually around love. Love is an overarching theme across the whole Bible. It forms the anchor of the two greatest commandments of loving God and loving others, but it also reflects that God is such a relational God. We look in particular at this concept of marriage, that this marriage metaphor that is in the book of Revelation. And we say that God's endgame is to be faithful and true to His bride. So let's begin. There's this marriage metaphor, right? It is if you look at marriage, it is the most intense, the deepest human connection we have by choice. By choice. All right? Which is important for us to realize. So we're not talking about your mother and father who you can't choose, or what your children are like. We're choosing like, you're a grown person, you've made a choice, and this is your most intense, deepest human connection. It's like all of me and all of you. Here in Australia, marriage is between these two persons, right, that forsake all others. They're voluntarily entered into for life. That is the scope of marriage. That's how intense it's meant to be. That you're supposed to be voluntary, so you choose it. It's for life, and it's to the exclusion of all others. Even our law agrees on that. But when you look at today's modern definitions of love, even all of me and all of you, John Legend's song lyrics, the next line is, your curves and all your edges. Oh my goodness. What a shallow view of all of me and all of you. Sometimes we treat marrying God as though we could just do whatever we want, live our lives anyhow we want to live, any way we choose, and then quickly rush off to Vegas and get married, and so then we can get all the riches and blessings of being the wife of a powerful king. Just like. But let's ponder about that concept just for a moment. Because what if you were engaged? Imagine you are engaged. You'd want to set the foundation or the early tone for your marriage, right? You'd want to do some things in the engagement so that your marriage sets off correctly. After all, not that much changes about a person the day after your wedding day. What do we imagine it would be like if we died and we went to heaven and we see God? Would God radically make us worship robots? We were like, just automatically, suddenly, we spend our whole life playing computer games and doing bad things, and then suddenly we make it to heaven and we only ever worship and sing Hillsong songs and pray every day. No way. That's like thinking your husband or wife is going to be a completely different person the day after their wedding day. Our conduct during engagement is crucial to the marriage, and maybe even to whether we get married or not. You see, God's goal has always been relationship, but it's not any kind of relationship. God's goal for relationship was close, covenantal, loving, In the Old Testament, it's a word called hesed, which is steadfast love or mercy. It's an intimate love. In Genesis, where marriage was first talked about, God says it was not good for man to be alone. And He created a woman and the first marriage. In fact, husband and wife is likened to Christ and the church. In Ephesians 5:31 and 32, it quotes Genesis to say that they should leave their mother and father and cleave to each other. And then it says that this is like Christ and the church. That's why the book of Revelation, it begins with these love letters. Because love and marriage is a major theme in the book of Revelation. These love letters to the churches say, don't lose your first love. Endure suffering, because love sticks through the bad times. Don't compromise. Don't be false. Don't look alive, but you're actually dead. Have patient endurance. Be willing to wait. And don't be lukewarm. The Hebraic marriage relationship is this great metaphor for deep love. It's got total purity, total commitment, and total focus. Even as I'm saying that, some of you are thinking, I'm not sure that that's really what I even want in marriage. Because I get it. It's so many of us go for something that is easier. We don't want to wait for marriage for sex. We don't want to wait for marriage to live together. We don't want to learn to lay down our lives fully for another person. What we settle for is cheap. And oftentimes we are left unsatisfied. Just as a quick aside, if somebody tells you they love you so much and they want to do everything just like a marriage, except that they don't want to get married, I think you have to ask, what is being left out? If it is love, and if it is so much like marriage, then why is it not marriage? I want to tackle a big myth as we talk about this topic, if I could. Because there is a mistaken belief that in Christianity, to be the bride of Christ means that we have to be the girlfriend that always has to keep proving ourselves to God. We better be a good girlfriend or else the marriage is off. Sex better be good. I have to give him time to hang with his guy friends. Oh, I better not trouble him with all my emotional issues, or on the Christian metaphor, I better go to church. I better serve in a lot of ministries. I got to give God a lot of money. Otherwise, He's not going to marry me. That's a myth, because that is works. The truth about our relationship with God is simpler and better than that. But it's also harder, kind of. Because you see, we're already loved. God has already made a commitment. In the Hebrew marriage, there's betrothal, there's the feast, and then there's the consummation. We have already been betrothed to God. We're engaged to be married to God. We are His people. There is this ketubah agreement, a Hebrew contract, if it were, that talks about the rights and responsibilities of the groom in relation to the bride. It sets the context for marriage. And this is because in those days, the groom had all of the power, but so has God. And in a Hebrew wedding, right after the betrothal and the signing of the ketubah, the groom goes away to sort out his affairs. He gets his property, he gets blessings from his parents, he arranges this new life, and he comes back. He makes the journey back to his bride. And he can't send a WhatsApp message or a GPS location to say when his arrival time is. It's not known when he will return. But when he arrives, he's expecting the bride to be ready. Matthew 24:36 says, no one knows the time. We must also look at Matthew 25, which talks about these 10 virgins, and they're supposed to be waiting for when the bride comes. And I hope you'll take a look at that during the home group. Do you know what is being required for us as engaged to Christ, being His girlfriend or fiancé, as it were? Only that we be faithful. Is that too much to ask? To put our faith in Him and to not go for a counterfeit. We are to wait faithfully, have no others, read his letters to stir up our love. And better still, we have the Holy Spirit who is with us, and he's alive and at work within us. So it is not works, it is faith. How do faith and works interplay? Do we do what we want when we're engaged? James 2:17-18 says, "So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. But someone will say, 'You have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by my works.'" What we do during this time of engagement, I think, is so crucial to our marriage. We are to remain faithful. And if we are faithful, then the fruit of it will come out. God's end game is to be there for us right at the very end. When we are found faithful waiting for him, he himself will be faithful and true to his bride.